Good afternoon, class. This is Professor Barry Brennan. I'm going to talk to you today. I'm talking to my interpersonal communication class. And today we're going to talk about verbal communication, basically how we use words when we communicate. And we're going to look at it in a couple of different ways. And I want you to just keep in mind as we talk about that, how is it, like what kind of words and what kind of language do you use when you talk to people, and what does that look like, right? What is that? um are you careful with your words? I've talked a lot about, I'm going to get my notes, I'll be right back. um we talked a lot about the need to pay attention to our words, right? Especially since we're online, and what kind of language we do use really affects other people because it's not put in any context, right? We're not really seeing the person, we're just looking at the words. So keep all that in mind as we move through this lecture. The lecture is probably going to take up about, usually my lectures, takes about 3 parts. I'm going to take a guess, probably 3 parts. And then at some point, either today or tomorrow, I'm also going to post another lecture about the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. And I talked a little bit about that in a previous lecture when I was talking about the scholars, I believe they're anthropologists, who studied the Hopi language, and I think when I was talking about perception or possibly culture, but how that language I want to keep this in mind when we talk about language, how language helps us frame our reality. So when we talk about words, we're talking about language. And I'm speaking English, right? But if I were to be speaking Spanish, if I were to be speaking, in Espanol, hablo en español. If I were to be speaking in Spanish, then right there, hablo or habla, se habla or hablamos, or the verbs in Spanish and in, let's see, in Italian and French, in the Romance languages. I don't know other languages. I don't speak any Asian language, so I don't know how that works. But I have studied Romance languages that the verb determines like who's talking, whether it's a we, whether it's a us, like nosotros means us or we, whether it's them, ellos, ellas, and it's feminized and masculine. It's whether it's feminine or masculine. Now, hablo is always, with the O, is always I, and interesting enough, that's not feminine or masculine, the I part. But if we talk about ella or el, it's habla. We know it's ella or el. I'm speaking Spanish, if you don't know that already, if you don't speak Spanish. And let's see, if we're talking about ellos, we're talking about they, but they could be as in they are all men, or it could be they as in just they in general, okay? And ellas means it's all female. What's the point of this? The point of this is language frames our reality. And in English, we don't have that. When we say they, it could be any they. There is no gender attached with they. Now, we've also moved into using they, he, she, and all these pronouns differently now with our understanding of transgender, right? As a category of a person, or a sexual, not sexual, or as a gender category. So that kind of changes it up. But I'm talking about like the generalization of how how it frames our reality. And keeping that in mind, that awareness as you speak, because we talk all the time, we don't think about it. Right? We don't think about even how the sentence is structured, right? Those of you that speak Spanish, you know what I'm talking about. Why is it that in Spanish, the noun, the adjective, the description of the noun, the thing, comes after and not before? In English, we say white bear, right? It's not even white. What color is it? It's like pinkish. It's like beige. Beige bear. But if I were to say this in Spanish, oh gosh, I don't even know what bear is in Spanish. Whatever it is, tan or brown, right? Moreno or morena. So I don't know what bear is in Spanish. But anyway, the point is, it would come after. Okay, it would come after, not before. So all of this is about how we arrange our reality and how we see reality. So keep this in mind as we talk about verbal communication, as we communicate interpersonally with words. That was a long introduction, but hopefully it will help you frame it for you, put it in context of how we're going to talk about it. So here we go. Let's look at this PowerPoint. PowerPoint's right there. So communicating with words, what do we mean by that? Words we use during the communication process, defining verbal communication. What is verbal communication? How do we define that, right? How would you define it, right? Is it just words we use during the communication process? Basically. It could be grunts though, right? Sounds that we make. If you don't speak a certain language and you hear that language, it might not even sound like a language, right? Those of you that know any indigenous languages, like the Lakota language or even the Navajo language, how people that are from that indigenous tribe or indigenous group express language is totally different than English, totally different than Spanish, right? Totally different. So verbal communication, words we use during the communication process. So we're going to look at the 4 key characteristics when we talk about verbal communication. We're going to look at it in terms of rules. All languages have rules. We just talked about that for the first 5 minutes. You know, why is the adjective after the noun in Spanish? Why is that? You know, what does that even mean? And words are also symbols, by the way. They're not anything. Like, we have decided that we created this alphabet. We put these sounds associated with the alphabet. We decided that. It could be it's a completely random thing of why we decided, you know, A means ah. It has that sound, or A sound. Or B means buh or buh. Or in the H in Spanish is H. Why is that? Instead of in English, it's ha, right? So all these are symbols that we associate with sounds we've made up. There's nothing, I just want to keep that in mind. It's completely a random thing that we agreed upon it socially. And it's also subjective, like it's through our own personal experience that we experience words and they have meaning to us. And we also put it in context. Words put in context have different meanings in other context. Let's say that word, now it's become a popular thing that people say when they describe something they don't like. Wow, that sucks. Right? What does that word even mean? Think about that. Right? When something sucks, it's now become terrible. But when you suck something, it could be like it's a sucker, right? Like a lollipop or a popsicle. You know what I'm saying? So think about what that means, of why we decided, why is that? Why do we use that word to just make it sound terrible? Why? I don't know. It's context. It's cultural. These are the things that we come up with and they change over time. Why does the word cool mean, wow, that's cool? What does that even mean? We all know when we say, man, that's really cool. Like, we like it. Like, it passes. It makes us feel good. Is that because the word cool is associated with feeling good? I don't know. It sounds like I'm getting off in tangents, but I'm really trying to get you to think about all of these possibilities of the words that we use in our vocabulary all the time and how they have meaning. Like, I'm going to say another one. That's really bad, man. Bad means good now. 25 years ago, there's no way. You know, the word was like something was bitchin', right? That's like an 80s word. Or groovy, that's a 60s word, which seems to be kind of coming back. So again, language, context, historical reference, so much is around that. Okay, rules. We look at all languages have rules. They have grammatical rules. They have rules in terms of like when they're said, situations that they're said. That has to do with context. Every language has agreed upon rules. Okay, we have what these things are called constitutive rules. And that the constitutive rules identifies the appropriate usage of words and interprets the meaning of word. Okay, so it's able, those constitutive rules identify the appropriate usage of the words. When is it right to use that word and to interpret the meaning? Now, the regulative rules control communication by managing, guiding the interaction. It identifies the when, how, where, and with whom we talk to in specific situations. Okay? So, let's go back to that word sucks. So today I'm going to give you an example. So a student sent me a message about something that they were upset about. I don't remember what it was. And I wanted to agree with them. Now, I can't say to a student, you know what, that sucks. I can't write that. That's an unprofessional thing to say. Now, if I was one-on-one with that student and we were in the classroom together and they came up to me and told me this terrible thing happened, or this unfortunate thing happened, it wasn't like terrible, it was more unfortunate, I could have said, man, that sucks, right? I could have said that verbally and gotten away with it. But to write it, I was like, I can't say that to a student. That's unprofessional and it's not the right thing to say. It's not the appropriate language to use when you're writing. You see, that's regulative rules. It's a perfect example of regulative rules, of knowing when and who you can talk to in what sense. Now, if I was talking to a colleague, I probably wouldn't use the word sucks either. In fact, I don't even think, it depends on if I knew the colleague well. If the colleague is now my friend, I might say, man, I might use different language, right? But if it's a colleague I don't know, I'm never going to use a word that sucks. In fact, what would allow me to use that kind of language is if the person, like, let's say the colleague, like my boss, like the dean, if she were to use a certain language, then I would feel free to use that language. But if she only uses like really appropriate professional language, then I would only use that. Okay, that's what we're going back to looking at how these regulative rules work in situations. So language has constitutive, which identifies the appropriate usage of words, which has to do how are words defined, what do they mean, right? Chair means chair. It hasn't been used any other way. We know it's agreed upon. The interpreter of the words, we've decided a chair, that's the thing I'm sitting in. It's something that you sit in. It usually is, a chair is different than a stool, right? A stool just has like usually 4 legs on it, and it's a round thing, usually has a round or a square, and you're just going to sit your butt on it. But a chair always has a back where you can lean back in it, right? Difference between a chair and a stool, they both have purposes for sitting. Constitutive rules, we agree upon them. Regulative rules, again, goes to how it guides our behavior, and it's situational. It's the when, how, where, and with whom we talk to in specific situations.